From the very beginning, the move to California was framed as liberation, freedom from palace protocol, freedom from the press, freedom to live life on their own terms. But 5 years on, the reality looks very different. What was meant to symbolize independence has instead become a symbol of excess, miscalculation, and confinement. In 2020, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle purchased their Montecito estate for approximately $14.65 million. At the time, the decision seemed bold but defensible. They had just signed lucrative deals with Netflix and Spotify, media contracts reportedly worth over $100 million combined. Confidence was high. The assumption was clear: the money would continue flowing indefinitely. What did not appear to factor into the decision was sustainability. The property itself is massive: 9 bedrooms, 16 bathrooms, guest cottages, manicured gardens, and luxury amenities that rival high-end resorts. But estates like this do not simply exist. They consume resources. Security alone costs millions annually. Add staffing, maintenance, insurance, legal fees, and lifestyle expenses, and the burn rate becomes staggering. Royal biographer Angela Levin has described the house not as a sanctuary, but as a prison. That description works on more than one level. Financially, it is a fixed asset with enormous carrying costs. Psychologically, it represents a life built on expectations that are no longer being met, and symbolically, it stands as a monument to a future that never materialized. Reports suggest Prince Harry now spends much of his time inside the property, rarely venturing out. This is a striking contrast to the man he once was, deeply engaged in military service, surrounded by structure, purpose, and camaraderie. The promise of California was movement and opportunity. The result appears to be isolation and stagnation. This is not a temporary downturn or a rough adjustment period. It is the slow dismantling of what was once billed as the most ambitious reinvention in modern royal history. When Harry and Meghan left the UK, they did so with confidence bordering on certainty. They believed global audiences would pay premium prices for their perspectives, their presence, and their carefully curated identity as progressive, modern royals. The assumption was that prestige alone would sustain demand. But prestige without delivery does not last. The Netflix and Spotify deals were not blank checks. They required output, content that resonated with audiences. And over time, the gap between expectation and execution became impossible to ignore. Projects launched with fanfare but faded quickly. Promises were made, deadlines slipped, and enthusiasm waned. Meanwhile, the bills did not. One of the recurring observations from commentators close to the situation is spending. Multiple sources have described Meghan as maintaining a luxury lifestyle that assumes constant high income, designer clothing, premium accessories, and a household structured around abundance rather than caution. Harry, by contrast, is reportedly increasingly anxious about finances. His wealth, while substantial by ordinary standards, was never limitless. Inheritance from Princess Diana, residual allowances, and investments provided security, not infinite expansion. As income streams narrowed, concern grew. The central tension appears to stem from mismatched expectations. Meghan reportedly entered the marriage believing she was aligning herself with vast, near-unlimited resources. The reality was far more constrained. Royal wealth is not Hollywood wealth, and royal money is rarely liquid. As income contracted, spending habits did not adjust. That imbalance now defines the Montecito situation. Staff must still be paid, security remains non-negotiable, legal battles continue, and the house, unsellable without public acknowledgement of retreat, remains fixed at the center of it all. This is how a dream hardens into a trap. Harry's discomfort is reportedly visible. The concern is not simply about money, but about direction. What was meant to be a fresh start has become a waiting room. Days stretch without purpose. The identity that once came from service and duty has not been replaced with anything equally grounding. The irony is difficult to miss.
In leaving an institution they described as confining, they built a life that offers even fewer anchors. And this is only the beginning of the problem. If the Montecito mansion represents the financial strain, the speaking circuit reveals the reputational one. At one point, Prince Harry commanded $50,000 to $100,000 per appearance. Those figures reflected scarcity, novelty, and perceived authority. Today, reports suggest fees have dropped dramatically, sometimes to just a few $100s. That is not repositioning. That is liquidation. When a brand slashes its price by over 99%, it signals desperation, not accessibility. Each discount lowers perceived value, making the next one inevitable. Harry is no longer building a platform. He is selling off the remnants of relevance as quickly as possible. The choice of venues has only intensified criticism. Harry has appeared as a speaker on privacy and digital ethics, subjects that sit uneasily alongside his own actions. He has publicly decried media intrusion while simultaneously monetizing personal stories, family conflicts, and private experiences through books and documentaries. The contradiction is impossible to ignore. Critics have pointed out the irony of Harry lecturing on privacy while having published one of the most intimate royal memoirs in history. The message becomes muddled. Advocacy turns into performance. Credibility erodes. Meanwhile, Meghan's parallel effort, the As Ever lifestyle brand, has faced its own collapse. The brand launched with heavy emphasis on aesthetics and personal identity, but execution quickly became the issue. Promotional materials were criticized as amateurish. Pricing structures confused consumers. Bundles cost more than individual items. Basic quality control failed. Reports of defective products, including candles without wicks, became symbolic of a deeper dysfunction. Even more damaging was the response. Customers who raised concerns were met not with refunds or accountability, but with silence or hostility from online supporters. This is not how sustainable brands operate. Industry observers began noting a familiar pattern: big launch, heavy publicity, minimal follow-through. The same trajectory seen with Spotify, Netflix, and now retail. Over time, the story stopped being about individual failures and started being about consistency. Meghan's public identity once centered on activism, advocacy, and global influence. Today, that image has narrowed to lifestyle content and product promotion. For critics and even former supporters, the contrast is jarring. Netflix's decision not to continue certain projects quietly confirmed what many already suspected. Audience interest was not sustaining beyond initial curiosity. Celebrity alone was not enough. 5 years after their departure from royal life, the core question remains unanswered. What is the value proposition? Harry is caught between loyalty to his wife and estrangement from his family. Meghan is caught between ambition and market reality. Both are constrained by decisions made when optimism was at its peak and caution was absent. Reconciliation with the royal family remains unlikely without accountability. Expectations of restored privilege without restored trust have stalled any progress. Demands for accommodations, security, and status clash with the reality of voluntary departure. What remains is a brand built almost entirely on title, without the institution that once gave it weight. Strip away the Duke and Duchess labels, and what's left is an ordinary celebrity couple in an extraordinarily expensive house struggling to justify relevance. They rejected the responsibilities of royal life, but continue to rely on its symbolism for attention and income. The promise of departure was freedom, privacy, and fulfillment. The outcome has been scrutiny, contradiction, and financial pressure. When expectations exceed reality for too long, denial becomes impossible to sustain, and when image collapses under its own weight, even a mansion can feel like confinement. That is where this story now sits, not as a tragedy, but as a cautionary tale about overconfidence, entitlement, and the limits of celebrity without substance.